How did he give me HIV part 6? So I went ahead and came inside because I was getting tired of sitting in the car. All right, so yeah. So now here we go. We get married. We get married and our wedding night. Remember I kept saying, our wedding night is the first night that we had unprotected sex. No condom, no protection, nothing. Our wedding night was the first time that we had unprotected sex. We had talked about having kids together. Even though he already had his 3 kids prior, and then I had my daughter. We talked about having a child, at least one child together, to kind of like solidify our union, so to speak. Because again, this was someone who I was like, yeah, when I get married, like there was nothing in me that said when I got married that there was going to ever be an option for divorce, unless there were certain circumstances or something like that. But never did I even like have that as a thought, like, oh, what if he cheat on me? What if he do this? Like that was never a part of my thought process of getting married, because again, I had seen so many people around me who were married, who, had that longevity that I wanted to have. And so I didn't think nothing, about anything negative in a marriage. So we have unprotected sex our wedding night. And time moves on. Here it is now, October. It's the end of October. At this time, I was working a 3rd shift job doing shipping and receiving. And I started getting sick, y'all. I started getting sick. Okay. So I go and get a pregnancy test, and I'm pregnant. Okay? Yeah, I'm pregnant. What? So, I got the pregnancy test. I did a couple of them, make sure I wasn't crazy. He came home and I showed him the test and he was excited. Like his reaction was excitement, That's what I assumed it was excitement, because that's what it seemed. And so I called the doctor. I say, listen, I'm pregnant. I'm new here to the city pretty much. I don't know where I need to go. So my primary care physician, the same one who, I went and saw that summer and established myself with, they referred me to the OBGYN. So, if you've ever been pregnant or, you go through the whole process. You go in there. Your first visit, you're not seeing a doctor. You usually go in, they're going to get your history and physical information. They're going to draw labs. And then they'll reschedule you to come back in to have your first appointment with the doctor and to go over your labs, because they want to get a baseline. Usually when they're getting the labs, it's because they want to get a baseline. They want to make sure you don't have high blood pressure, that you don't have diabetes, that you're healthy to have a pregnancy. So I did all of this. My next appointment wasn't scheduled to go back until the Monday after Thanksgiving of 2007. However, leading up until Thanksgiving, I kept getting so nauseous. I was throwing up everything I ate. I would just throw it up, but nothing would stay down. And so I called my doctor because I wasn't feeling well. And I was like, listen, I can't keep food down. I don't feel good. I feel very weak. And she said, sounds like you're dehydrated. Can you come into the office? So here it is, November 21st, 2007. It's the day before Thanksgiving. My mom and my aunt had came to visit us for Thanksgiving, because that was going to be like my first like real holiday away from family. So my mom came, my aunt came with her, so she wasn't driving and coming by herself. And they were there with us for Thanksgiving. And so he goes with me, he takes me to the doctor, and we get there. All right, so this is really the part that you really got to pay attention to. We get there, and we go into this little room. We go into a small room. It's not a big room. It's not a big exam room. It's just a little room with this dull gray paint on the wall. There's one of those plastic cold reclining chairs. There's one IV pole. There's another chair for like if you bring somebody with you. And there's not even like a table. There's just like the little rolling stool like a doctor or nurse can sit on it. There's not even a table, computer, none of that is in this room. So I'm in there. They've hooked me up to IV fluids because, again, I was severely dehydrated. So they're giving me IV fluids. They're keeping a check on me, giving me also nausea medicine. So at this point, I'm kind of like loopy in a sense from the nausea medicine. And so the doctor comes in and she was like, well, you know, is it okay if I ask your husband to step out of the room while we talk for a moment? And again, I'm a medical assistant, phlebotomist. I understand HIPAA and privacy. I didn't think anything of it when she's asking me, can he step out of the room? Yes, you can talk to me. Yeah, cool. You know, so he steps out of the room, and as he steps out of the room, she comes back in, and she says to me, she says, well, I got all of your labs back already, and I just kind of wanted to go over them with you. And she's like, well, everything looks okay except one thing. And I'm looking at her like, well, what's the one thing? And then in my mind, I'm like, oh, so I literally said it. I was like, oh, my blood sugar was high, wasn't it? And I'm giving her this whole thing about, oh, yeah, you know, when I was pregnant with my oldest daughter, toward the end of the pregnancy, I had gestational diabetes. You know, am I going to have to do insulin again? Like, this is where I'm thinking, like, am I going to have to do insulin again? Like, I hated sticking myself with the insulin needles. You know, this is what I'm saying to her. And she's looking at me like, girl, this ain't what, this is not what I need to tell you. Like, that's her expression. So then I kind of like back up a little bit, and I'm like, I guess she realized my face because she's not responding to me saying what I'm saying. And she says, well, your labs came back saying that you are HIV positive. And I just kind of like, at this point, like I feel like I'm a very good person with giving eye contact. And at this moment, I'm not giving any eye contact. I literally found a spot on this gray wall and I just stared at it. And she's still talking to me. She's saying, it almost felt like when she's talking, it almost like the whole sound in the room just blurred out. I didn't hear nothing. I'm just staring at this gray wall because at this point I'm numb. I'm numb as shit. Like, I'm so numb. Like, I didn't know how to react. I didn't. And so she says to me, do you want me to bring your husband back in the room for you to tell him, or do you want me to tell him? And I said to her, I said, you can bring him back in and you can tell him. I said, because if you're telling me that I'm HIV positive, he is the reason why. And she kind of just looked at me like, what she mean by that? So she brings him back into the room and she tells him. Now, keep in mind, if you are being told something as devastating as your partner is HIV positive, you're not going to be sitting there cool, calm, and collected. You're not going to be nonchalant. Like, you're not going to be just calm. She tells him that I'm HIV positive, and he says to her, we'll get through this. We'll work this out. This was his freaking words to this doctor. Like, he wasn't hysterical. Like, what? What you mean? What you mean? How? How that happen? Do I need to get checked? Like, this was none. His reaction was nothing like that. His reaction was, we'll get through this. We'll work this out. So then I guess the doctor picked up on his reaction too. And then that visit pretty much ended because I've gotten all my IV fluids. I've gotten, you know, what I needed in that moment. So as we get to the car, again, I'm still drowsy. He's driving. We get to the car and we get in the car. And the first thing he says to me is, don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody. What do you mean, don't tell anybody? Don't tell anybody. And then he reiterates this whole thing of, we'll get through this. We'll work this out.